What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTB Ravens Media, bringing Ravens content every single day. If you want to see that daily Ravens content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell as well if you want to get notified every single time I upload a brand new video. Now, in this video today, I'm going to be talking about some comments made by Greg Roman today. Wow, shocker. Gregory Roman making comments about the passing game and things like that. But I think potentially it's good news, but it's also kind of slanderous. So, his comments were kind of slanderous, not my comments. But, overall, let me know what you guys think about, what he said, and I'll be going over what he said if you don't know already. But this video, I'm going to be talking about the Ravens passing scheme and how potentially things could change. Because according to Ryan Mink on Twitter, he says, Greg Roman says Lamar Jackson is, quote, throwing the ball the best I've ever seen. Says he could call the game differently this year because of it. Now, this is a two-parter, right? The first part is you read it and you're like, okay, Greg Roman's looking to open up the passing game. Like, based on exactly what he says, it looks like, oh, Greg Roman's really going to try and open up the passing game. But the opposite end of it is he wasn't opening it up the passing game because he didn't think Lamar Jackson could do it. So I'm going to talk about both parts. Let's start off with the first part. Let's talk about him saying that he can make some changes and like what those changes could potentially look like. The biggest thing that we've seen throughout training camp, throughout practice, throughout the offseason, throughout discussing with coaches, discussing with Lamar, discussing with wide receivers, the deep ball seems to be a priority for the offseason. Lamar Jackson yesterday talked about how he was working with Bateman and he was working with Prochet over the summer to work on that deep ball. Throughout practice, there's been an increased amount of seam routes, back shoulder throws, all, with the tight ends, with the wide receivers. That's a major focus of Lamar Jackson this offseason and this training camp and this practice session has been Lamar Jackson throwing that back shoulder ball. That's not been a major focus of the Ravens. Now, Lamar Jackson's been able to throw back shoulder. He's made some fantastic back shoulder and over the shoulder throws in his career. I think the most underrated throw of his entire career was 2019 Week 2 against the Arizona Cardinals, where he has Hollywood Brown for basically the game-sealing play over the top, like right over the shoulder, perfectly placed. But that's been a major focus of the offseason. And with Greg Roman saying like he's looking to open that up, that's something where it's like, okay, maybe that deep ball, which we have been calling for. We've been calling for it for years. Let Lamar throw deep. Coming out of college, that was a strength of Lamar Jackson. It is a misconception that he came out of college not being able to throw the ball deep. No, the questions were about whether or not he would be able to make the intermediate and short throws because he's got a good deep ball. And he's always had a good deep ball. The comparisons to Michael Vick, coming out of college were because of his obvious athleticism at, scrambling and all of that, but also their ability to throw the deep ball. Both have very strong arms and both can get it to where they want deep down the field. That was the comparison, right? Well, Greg Roman's finally admitting that, hey, I'm seeing this looking really well. And so maybe we're going to be able to put it out there. At the same time, guys, every offseason, this is what we hear from Greg Roman. Man, Lamar's looking really good. I think we can really implement some new stuff with his improvements. Has Greg Roman implemented anything new? I can't recall anything. Sometimes he gets new receivers. He got Duvernay. I was like, wow, sweet. I have a guy that can run on jet sweeps now. So I guess that's new. Running a lot of jet sweeps and, end arounds and such. But maybe the wide receiver screens that they would throw on the jet sweeps. Hollywood fake jet sweep, bubble out. Lamar hits him in the flats on a screenplay. That was maybe an addition that he made. But I feel like it was more necessary because none of the receivers could get down the field and get open. So he was like, oh no, I got to get him in the backfield with the ball. But overall, yes, he's saying, oh yeah, I think we can open up the playbook. And based on what the practices have looked like, everything that we've heard about them, it seems like the deep ball is a focus. So hopefully, I'm hoping, the amount of times I've hoped Greg Roman does something and it doesn't happen is way too much to count. But I'm hoping that maybe that means that he's trying to implement the deep ball. but it also could potentially just be mumbo jumbo that he's spilling. The other half of it, right, is I've been seeing so many people talk about this, and I kind of read it thinking about it the same way, where people are like, Greg Roman is using Lamar Jackson as an excuse for how horribly he has called games. Because Lamar Jackson being able, and Lamar's probably gotten better as a passer over the offseason. That's the thing. It's like Lamar can have gotten better, and it can still be a negative statement towards Lamar because, he's a young quarterback, right? He's one of the youngest quarterbacks in the NFL still. So, he's getting better every offseason. That's something that we know. But him saying, now we can actually implement things when the offense has been so unbearably basic, especially with the passing schemes. You don't think Lamar Jackson can throw a deep ball every once in a while? Let Lamar Jackson have a play action, because in 2019, Lamar Jackson was throwing the ball deep. He was hitting Hollywood. Hollywood would drop some. Hollywood would catch some. But he could throw the ball deep. It was very clear. Last year, he was throwing the ball deep a little bit. It seems like it keeps getting less and less, even though in 2019, people forget the Ravens were the most explosive offense in the NFL. The most big plays, the most 20-yard plays was the Baltimore Ravens. Because Lamar was stretching the field, and the run game was working. And Greg Roman has not been taking the defenders out of the box. That is the opposite of what he's doing. He's actually crowding the box, not throwing anybody deep, and allowing more defenders there, which is reducing in the, yards per carry. It's reducing in yards per game. It's reducing in Lamar Jackson's numbers. And it's reducing in the passing numbers because there's nobody going deep. And there's nobody trying to go for back shoulder throws. Remember how many weeks we were claiming, hey, Greg Roman, why don't you call a slant play when it's very obviously cover zero? It took about 3 weeks before he even attempted one, it seemed like. Like they just refused to run a slant. I don't know about any of you guys, but if your quarterback can't throw a slant route, they shouldn't be in the NFL. They shouldn't be in the NFL. So Greg Roman's saying, oh, now that Lamar's, I'm kind of seeing some stuff from Lamar. We can implement new things. Is one of those new things slant routes? Did you not have confidence in his ability to throw a slant? Or to throw a deep ball? Because every offseason, every wide receiver that's played with Lamar that is left has been like, man, Lamar is money. Lamar hits us for throws. Like Des Bryant talked to him, he's like, man, Lamar hits me with the back shoulder. I high point it. Lamar hits me in the back of the end zone. He hits me on the sideline. He does all of this in practice. But when he comes to the game, Greg Roman just doesn't have that faith to call that play. Because based on what the wide receiver saying, Willie Snead, Hollywood, Des Bryant, it seems like in practice, Lamar hits the throws. We've seen today there was a big play from one of the wide receivers that I'll have to pull up while I'm talking. But they keep hitting guys deep. They keep doing it. And Lamar Jackson is just money throwing deep down the field. But the way Greg Roman is phrasing it is like, oh, now we can really implement some things. Like Lamar was doing that his sophomore season. He was doing that his sophomore season. It wasn't something where he developed. It's very different from Josh Allen when he came in. Josh Allen has had major improvements in his passing game. Historically good improvements in his passing game. He's gotten significantly better. And I understand he also got Stephon Diggs in that process, but he was wildly inaccurate his rookie year. He is so much better than he was now. But that's when you say, okay, now we're implementing these, outside of the numbers types of throws. Lamar Jackson has shown throughout his career that when given the opportunity, he can make those throws. The things that hold Lamar back is the simplicity in the offense. And it's obvious to any viewer of the Ravens that's not just watching in order to nitpick Lamar Jackson in every possible way that he can. Because when the haters do it, they're like, oh, you see that play? That play didn't work. And it's like, well, no, duh, it didn't work. Greg Roman threw 4 players to one spot and said, Lamar Jackson, run at them. And, let's get this 2-point conversion. Like, that's not going to work. So it's something where it's just frustrating because anytime Lamar Jackson does something and, like, Greg Roman talks about it, it always seems like Greg Roman's closer to being the anonymous defensive coordinator than he is being Lamar Jackson's offensive coordinator. Because an offensive coordinator is supposed to design an offense around a player. And I get Greg Roman has a good run scheme. I don't want to take that away from Greg Roman. Fantastic run scheme, one of the best run game coordinators in the NFL. But if you cannot pair that with a passing game, you are not going to succeed. And that is what we have seen out of the Baltimore Ravens in big games. The passing game doesn't work. And it's not at Lamar Jackson's fault. Lamar Jackson, one game was Lamar Jackson's fault, and I feel like that was his first ever playoff game against the Chargers, which people forget. The Ravens had the ball, and they were driving, and they had a chance to win that game against the Chargers before, I think it was Joey Bosa. It may have been somebody else got a strip sack late in the fourth quarter, but Lamar and Crabtree, they brought the Ravens back. Bottom than that, he put up over 500 yards against the Tennessee Titans. But Greg Roman refused to run the football because Mark Ingram got hurt. Refused to run the football. Refused. The big games against the Chiefs. The Chiefs have a bottom 5 run defense in the NFL. And Greg Roman goes, oh yeah, first 2 drives we averaged 6.5 yards per carry. Then we didn't run the ball again until the third quarter, it seems like. Is that really the way you're trying to play? To go away from your guns? And then when he tries to throw the ball, he doesn't allow Lamar Jackson to use the arm that he very clearly has. Because Lamar Jackson will scramble outside the pocket and he'll throw a ball 35 yards down the field and hit a guy in stride. Why doesn't Greg Roman trust him to do that from the pocket? Like, we see, I understand Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they've had a ton of chemistry and time to develop that chemistry. But they're able to look at each other at the line and say, hey, this is one-on-one. Let me snap it. 15, 20 yards down the field, I'm going to hit you on the back shoulder. The Ravens never give Lamar that opportunity except for Mark Andrews. And it works with Mark Andrews. It works really well. There's nothing more devastating to an NFL defense than Lamar Jackson on 2nd and 7, snapping the ball, taking 4 steps in the drop back, and then hitting Mark Andrews 25 yards down the seam on that back shoulder. Mark Andrews does that like jumping back, catch like this right here, and then lands and cradles the ball as he lands. Like, it's money. Like, that play works so consistently, but Greg Roman doesn't trust it with the wide receivers. And I understand not trusting that with Hollywood, but trust that with Bateman. Trust that with Prochet. Trust that with Tylan Wallace. That is the exact reason why you drafted every single one of those players. The exact reason was they can make those catches. And Lamar Jackson can very clearly make those throws. But Greg Roman's like, oh, well, I haven't really seen it from Lamar Jackson. Now he's like, oh, wow, he's looking so much better. Now we can add things to our offense. You could throw out Daniel Jones at quarterback and you could add things to the Ravens offense. And Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback at all. Lamar Jackson's a more accurate. Lamar Jackson has a better deep intermediate and short ball. But if Daniel Jones is your quarterback, you can throw some slant routes and you can throw some throws on the sideline. Let me know what you guys think about Greg Roman's comments. Were they good? Were they bad? Was it difficult to decipher? I don't know. But thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe for Daily Ravens content, and I'll see all of you again tomorrow.